Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining Heritage Talks Online. If you've joined us before, welcome back for another session. And if this is your first time, we're really pleased that you've joined us today. My name is Heather Darch, and I'm joined today by Glenn Patterson, and we are your co-hosts, and we're project directors for the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network, otherwise known as QAHN. QAHN is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to preserve and promote the history, heritage, and culture of Quebec, and in particular of Quebec's English-speaking communities spread right across the province. If you go to our website at QAHN.org, you'll discover a wide range of activities and projects that we're involved in, and you can also see what we're doing on the QAHN Facebook pages, including the schedule of our super lineup of researchers, writers, and historians that have made up our series. You can also see the presentation dates, the topics, and if you'd like to join by Zoom, you can click on the pre-registration link that's there in the posts. And you don't have to have a Facebook page in order to do this. QAHN's Heritage Talk Facebook page is public, so anybody can join. All of our projects, including Heritage Talks Online, are successful because of the generous support that we receive from our community and supporters of people like yourself who are joining us today. So thank you very much for being here. You're welcome to become a QAHN member, and QAHN membership is open to everyone, including community groups and heritage organizations. So please check out our website for more information on how to become a QAHN member. And you can also discover what all of our memberships are doing across the province as well, all our heritage organizations. Memberships enable us to present quality workshops and programs and projects that you cannot find anywhere else, including Heritage Talks Online. And membership also gives you the advantage of receiving our newsletter, our magazine called Quebec Heritage News. It's filled with really wonderful articles about heritage groups, about the activities that are going on, but also history and heritage that you cannot find in the history textbooks. And you know, if you're like history, that the best history is not in the history textbooks. It's in a magazine like Quebec Heritage News. So if you become a member, that is one of the things that you do receive. It's actually a really great time to become a member because QAHN has just published an anthology, a 2-volume set called Historical Views, Selections from Quebec Heritage News, 2000 to 2020. And this is a 2-volume set with over 120 articles and 150 images written by contributors to Quebec Heritage News in the past 20 years. The set is being sold with an included benefit of membership of 10% off for members. So the details on how to order the anthology are also available on our website. For first-time new members joining us today, we have a special discount of 30% that is good for a 1-year membership. So if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can send us a message in the comment box that you're interested in becoming a member. And if you're joining us on Zoom, again, you can use the chat box to say that you're interested in becoming a member. But bear in mind, this is only a deal that's offered during the length of time of our broadcast today. So like I said, a great time to become a member and join the fantastic community of people who love history right across the province. I'd like to take a moment to thank our funders who help make this program possible, including Canadian Heritage, the Secretariat for English-Speaking Quebecers, the Chalkers Foundation, the Zeller Family Foundation, and the Townshippers Foundation. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host today, Glenn, who has a few comments about the technology part of the program. Okay, Glenn.
Thanks, Heather. Yes, I'm here helping with the tech side of things today. So for those of you on Zoom, the most important things are the microphone and the video camera. So a lot of you have used it. You'll know where these are, but if not, if you're on a computer, at the bottom left of your screen, there's a little microphone button. During the presentation segment, you won't be able to unmute yourself. That's intentional, but afterwards you will be during the question period. There's also a video camera icon beside it. If you want to turn off your video so no one can see you, maybe you're eating a sandwich or whatever, you can do that. You don't have to though. But yes, I just want you to know where those controls are. If you're on a phone or tablet, you might have to tap the screen once to see those controls, but they're there as well. For the Q&A, and I'll remind you of this later, the way to ask a question is through the chat box in Zoom. So again, on the computer, it's along the bottom. There's an icon that says chat. Go in there and just say, I have a question. You don't have to type it out. Just tell us you have a question and we'll put you in the queue, and then we'll bring you on mic and we'll bring you on camera, and we'll get you to ask your question. You can also, if you don't want to be on camera, you can just type out your question and we'll ask it on your behalf. For people on Facebook, you can leave questions in the comment section. I'll do my best to relay them to our speakers from Facebook onto Zoom here. The last thing I want to note is that this Zoom call, this Heritage Talk, is being recorded. So if you don't want to be on the recording, just keep your video and microphone off. Otherwise, welcome to the recording. So eventually right away after the broadcast, this will be available on our Facebook page, QAHN Heritage Talks, as well as the QAHN main page on Facebook. And at some point in the future, we'll also upload them to our YouTube channel as well, but that'll be a few weeks yet. So without further ado, Heather, I want to bring you back on to introduce our speakers.
Great. Thanks, Glenn. Thank you. Yes, we have something a little different for you today. We have two guest speakers. Neil Faulkner was educated in England and studied science at McGill University. He joined the Federal Public Service, serving first in the Canadian Arctic, and subsequently in working with First Nations people, Northern social, economic, and political development, health, and the settlement of comprehensive land claims. A resident of Wakefield since 1988, he has been involved in community planning and other village organizations, including the reconstruction of the Wakefield Covered Bridge. Joan Garnett witnessed the burning of the bridge from her home, and as a consequence was inspired to work closely with her friends, the late Norma Walmsley and the late Anita Rutledge, on the committee to rebuild the bridge. Joan created and sold certificates as part of the fundraising efforts. Of her experience, she says, and I encourage you to listen for her pun, I was a Riverside supervisor when the new Wakefield Bridge reappeared. Ba-dum-bum. Hello, Neil and Joan. Their talk today is called After the Fire, A Community Rebuilds Its Bridge. Welcome to Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network's Heritage Talks Online.
Hello, Neil. Are you there?
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. We're really happy that we have an opportunity to tell the story. It's an important story of interest to all those who are interested in heritage and in what a community can do. I'm here with Joan, and we'll work as a team and tell the story. Zoom is not something that we're very familiar with. However, I want to reassure you that this is a safe presentation. Joan lives alone, and I live with my wife alone, and we've been that way for more than a year now. We've all had our vaccinations over a month ago, and so within the rules, we're allowed to get together and have conversations. So I can assure you this is a safe production. Go.
The Joan Covered Bridge was built in 1915 to link the village of Wakefield, Quebec with the eastern side of the Gatineau River. Over the years, it saw horse-drawn traffic, then automobiles that had to take turns entering this one-way structure from each end. Weathered to a light greenish-gray color, it was painted red in 1971. Suffered extensive damage from the flood 3 years later, and in 1981, the Provincial Department of Transport carried out repairs that were expected to make it of service for the foreseeable future. The bridge was a part of a provincial highway, Highway 366. And by the 1980s, drivers who used that highway for business and pleasure were becoming impatient with its low height, small load capacity, and one-way inconvenience. They saw the need for a new bridge to accommodate increased traffic, loads of construction material, and higher vehicles. But they must have regarded this major repair job as a sign that building of a modern bridge was not in provincial plans. So on the night of July 10th, 1984, an arsonist took things into his own hands. Just before midnight, shocked residents saw or were awakened to see that their beloved covered bridge had been set ablaze. It had taken only minutes for flames from a car that had been driven into the bridge and set on fire to ignite the tinder dry structure from end to end. It broke into two sections. And unbelieving onlookers, many out in their night clothes, watched as one section fell into the river, raced through the rapids, and then, like an ocean liner, crackling and flaming as it went, sailed downriver and burned out at a location south of Wakefield. The remaining section was caught up on the rocks along the shore and burned in place. One of those onlookers, the late Norma Walmsley, who I am representing today, lived in a house that overlooked the covered bridge. Viewing some of its blackened ruins close up the next day, she vowed to see this heart of the village rebuilt. As anticipated, building was soon begun on a new traffic bridge upriver. During the 3 years of its construction, river crossing was made on a Bailey bridge placed by the provincial government on the original piers. No stone was left unturned. People knew that Norma never left home without her receipt book, and almost 700 individuals and businesses from as far away as Australia made financial contributions. Over the next decade, more than 300 volunteers provided extraordinary help in milling, construction, painting, and landscaping. Their contribution cannot be overestimated, as together with donors of in-kind services and with price reductions by suppliers, they helped to reduce the final cost of the new bridge to less than $500,000. To create visibility for the project, the committee ordered covered bridge souvenirs, license plates, t-shirts, hats, and badges. Their sales team turned up at all community events. Tourists arriving on the Wakefield steam train were an excellent source of customers, and a small booth was constructed to accommodate those fundraisers and their display. Regular pamphlets kept people informed of progress, and at one point, people were given an opportunity to buy a beam, buy a rail, buy a bolt, each part of the bridge having been assigned a dollar value. Folks who were around at that time will remember the diverse projects organized by individuals and by the committee. Dinners, concerts, speakers, raffles, Christmas tree and other sales, a locally written and produced murder mystery, even a balloon race on the LePage Creek. The Wakefield Rockettes chorus line at the Winter Follies was a great hit, but cooler heads prevailed when a canoe race down Vorlaz ski hill was proposed. All those years of fundraising, shared fun, and pulling together created great memories and evoked a tremendous sense of pride and accomplishment, as well it might do. Secretary Treasurer Anita Rutledge and helpers kept careful records of the names of the patrons, members of the committee, financial and other contributors, volunteers, and many interesting facts. These, together with fascinating details of events and information, will add to the presentation, have been made into a builder's book. Copies printed in English and French can be viewed in Wakefield and Chelsea libraries or at Fairburn House in Wakefield. The book can also be accessed on the internet by searching Wakefield Covered Bridge Builders Book. That's Wakefield Covered Bridge Builders Book. Federal Job Creation, National Capital Commission, Heritage Canada, and the Historical Society of the Gatineau grants all help to realize the final funding goal. The Municipality de La Pêche covered the all-important matter of insurance during the building, made the yard and office in the village available for construction of the bridge, and paid for the bronze plaque that was installed at the east end of the bridge. Corporate donations were important, a vital one being from a pulp and paper company. The log drive on the Gatineau River had ceased in 1991. So instead of cash, the company just contributed 350 of the boom logs that had encircled pulp logs as they floated down the river over the years. A further 250 of those logs was bought by the bridge committee, who purchased a saw, and local volunteers sawed the logs to measure, providing building material for all of the bridge, except the pine siding. But this brings us to the construction part of the project, and the chair of its construction committee, Neil Faulkner, will share those details with you. If you have been under the impression that the X's or diamond shapes on the bridge window openings are just there as a decoration, listen up.
In October 1992, having received the donation of the logs and having a bank account in the order of about 70,000, and the permission of the municipality to build a bridge, to proceed to build the bridge on the abutments that are now owned by the municipality, an announcement was made in style and with music and oration that construction will begin from henceforth. It was a good time to join, and I headed up a small construction committee. However, the logs had been left had been delivered by rail to Farm Point, 5 kilometers away from Wakefield. They had begun the soaring of the lumber. We needed over 150,000 board feet in all, but the site was safe, but totally out of sight. So the public was unaware that it was happening.
Neil, I just want to ask you something. Did you want to start your PowerPoint presentation now, or are you going to start it later?
Oh, we've been going through it at my end. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you didn't share your screen like I showed you.
Okay.
I thought Joan was giving an introduction.
Okay. We're back.
So just as we practiced, click on share screen.
I'm sorry, I had eyes glued to the screen here.
So in Zoom, click on the green share screen. You got it. Now go to play, and you're all good. Looking good, Neil.
Okay. That's the announcement in 1992. We had received the donation of the logs. They were delivered in the dairy quarry, 5 kilometers out of sight from the village. We decided that it was time to move up to the village. The municipality and the train company had received funds to create a new station office and a parking lot, but the train company preferred to arrive at in the center of the village where the old station used to be. So we acquired a fantastic spot, an office and a large parking lot. The ceremony was held there. We organized the removal of the logs. up into the yard by train, which ran right through. And let me just go back a little bit there to that was we all asked ourselves, how did they build the first bridge? Well, this was a photograph that we managed to get from Quebec archives, and you can see it's a tranquil river, no sign of strong currents, and they erected scaffolding from local lumber, and they were able to build a horizontal structure in order to build the bridge on, and to pour the center pier. All very easy, considering that the covered bridges were in effect the extension of a barn. The trouble is, a barn is built on the ground, while a bridge has to cover wide open spaces and support a bridge. So consequently, the Americans, with the expansion of settlement, had to develop a way in which they could cross the thousands of streams. And the secret was to use local lumber in a lightweight structure by creating a strength in the walls of what would have been a barn and was wanting to be a bridge. So you had an upper chord that supported a lattice work held by a lower chord in a sandwich effect. The bridge had a roof to it in order to protect the lumber, and was cross-braced at the bottom to take the floor, and above to receive the all-important roof. Windows were necessary not for lovers to come and enjoy the sight, or to reassure the horses, but in order to ventilate the bridge to keep it dry. A little bit of geography. That's today's tourist map. You see the bridge at the top, right at the narrows of the river. By this time, dams had been built, and the river had risen by at least 2 or 3 feet. But more importantly, the flow had increased, and the rapids below where the bridge is today were extensive and turbulent. If you look over to the number 26, that's where the school is today, but we had it as a yard and a fantastic place to build the bridge. The railway comes up along the edge of the river right to our yard and delivered all the timber that we required. That's the bit that you missed. Sorry, excuse me, got the finger going the wrong way. Here we are in the quarry, sawing the first log, and for a whole year they produced an enormous amount of lumber, which was moved up to our workshop area. We were lucky having a logging industry in the region, so we're able to borrow for 4 years a 10-ton lift, which was essential to move the logs, because these logs were up to 50+ feet long, 16 by 16, weighing well over a ton each. So as you can imagine, when it comes to operating the sawmill and moving the lumber, you had to have heavy equipment. The sawmill is there. The one that we purchased was 24 feet long, and we had a loan of an extension so we could handle the logs up to 50 feet long. Other buildings were built in order to be able to work out of the weather in making the roof rafters. As you can see, for example, there are a number of the roof trusses being made. We only had to make 148 of those. Next to them, you'll see the lumber that is used as the side posts had to be cut, the cross braces, and also the floor joists. And stacked up there, the smaller lumber to be used as the lattices and the flooring. Here's the fine carpentry work being done to produce the side posts that went along the outside of the bridge and on the inside of the bridge. And here was an engineering brain trust in early 1995, when all the lumber had been sawn and we had laid out the first truss, and it was surveyed to be 144 feet long, the exact length of one span, and it was arched, had a camber in it that was 14 inches high in the middle. The purpose of that was to allow the structure to brace and flex with any loading. The tricky part was that it was made up of 8 layers of lumber. On the bottom were the blocks to keep it horizontal. Next were the posts into which the lower truss beam, there are 2 there, and then you have the 2 pieces of lumber that form the lattice. Then you have the upper, or in this case, the outside cord made of 2 more large pieces of lumber. On top of that is it's the inside post holding it all together. The exercise that we had ahead of us was to do all the drilling required for the posts. Over 2,000 bolts in all.
How long were those bolts?
Bolts were about 20 inches long,
Wow.
as I recall. But what was more important, we had advice from a New England post and beam builder who had been working on recovering their covered bridges and church steeples. And he advised us that we should double up on the lower and the upper trusses, and that we should also incorporate steel bolts. The original bridges used wood dowels, oak dowels, and then that was changed to steel bolts, and with Quebec bridges, even spikes. The problem with those was that the flexing of the bridge with each load caused the wood to move, and the wood couldn't resist the pressure of the steel and loosened up. It squeezed the wood, and so eventually those bridges tended to sag and had to be corrected by other means. So we used a number of ring shears, which when the bolt holes were drilled, the whole structure had to be taken apart in order to drill a keyhole ring around the bolt in order to insert the circular shear. You'll notice on the upper beam there that they have been strapped. Again, we borrowed equipment from Basham. A person had a steel strapper. All the top sides were strapped in order to ensure that the bridge did not move, or the truss did not move as we drilled all the holes. Once that was done, the structure was carefully taken apart. The shear installed, and then the bolts and the truss was completed.
That's quite a sandwich you've got there.
2,000 bolts.
Yeah.
It's a huge sandwich. Each one weighed between 30 and 50 tons. We apologize for being somewhat imprecise about weight, but remember that these boom logs had been in the river for up to 50 years, and so were thoroughly wet. They'd weathered on the outside. They incorporated all kinds of spikes and chains and pieces of metal, which was highly dangerous for, when we sawed the boom logs into lumber. So we had to check individually each boom log with a magnet in order to find where the metal was.
The reason those boom logs had lasted so long was they were a Douglas fir from British Columbia.
Well,
Many of them were.
we were, the timing was amazing, fortuitous. I mean, it was 7 years before we started, something like that, 7 or 9 years. But by that time, everybody had started to really miss the bridge. The vacant abutments were a
Piers,
sad sight to see. But here we had a gift of 350 logs of BC fir, which is the best building
Absolutely,
structure
yeah.
you could ever have. So this was a turning point here. In 1995, we'd been at it for a couple of years, sawing a huge amount of lumber. Norma was at the site on a regular basis, and here she was talking to the man organizing it, who was a recently graduated engineer, who we managed to find waiting in a restaurant, and he was just delighted to have a real engineering job. His name was Robin McLeod, and he was a tour de force in the organization. So was Norma, and they got together. She was so enthusiastic about this. This was just before July the 1st. So guess what happened on July the 1st? You name it. Norma and Joan were in the marshalling yard for the village parade at Ski Village,
They built their own bridge.
holding their own bridge, complete with the lattice work to show and the correct colors, and proudly leading the parade through the village and upping the enthusiasm that, yeah, the building is happening, and we need all the support we can get. Meanwhile, we had to send divers in to check the center abutment and the pier and the abutments. They were perfect, in perfect condition. The wood that contained the concrete and the rocks was still in place, so that was good. We also had to contact Hydro to determine, is there any way in which you can lessen the current so that the barges could go up, but at the same time keep the water at 16 feet below the top of the abutments. We also forged links with the meteorology department so that we had the latest in weather forecasts, because the serious implication of weather was the wind, and Wakefield is subjected in the summertime with strong winds. So that was all lined up, and we had to find a time when the tourist train was not arriving, in order that we could do the move out of the quarry, out of our building site, through the village and onto the river. The other two trusses, meanwhile, were completed, and the 148 roof trusses were completed, and it was time to call in the key team for making the move out of the yard. First of all was the Dalepka cranes from Ottawa, who had to lift. These are the final trusses. And here he comes in, and he had to lift each truss up. 2 trusses form a span. Once the first one was lifted up, it had to be stabilized while the second one was lifted up. And then they had to be boxed in using some of the lumber was permanent, other was just temporary. Here's Robin bolting in one of the upper cross beams, for example. Note all the bolts that had to be screwed in before. Next was the mobilization of the bridge builders. David Laflamme had come, stepped up, and one day it was called by a local reporter D-Day in Wakefield, because first a tug arrived, followed by crane. The tug was moved into the river, and while it was there, it was run up and down the river to determine the exact course that would be favorable. A couple of our workers seized the opportunity using a ladder to climb up onto the central abutment in order to prepare the foundation for the bridge. They took their material with them and stayed for the day while they did the work. The tug went back, and on the way back, it hit a rock. I think it was a useful experience for the tug driver, but the tug had to be pulled out of the river and the propeller repaired and put back in. While the workers were completed, there was no tug. So I came with my little boat, and they lowered all their equipment into my boat. And I said, well, see you later. And there they jumped into the river. That shows some of the enthusiasm in which our volunteers were involved in. So a week passed while we completed the strengthening of the spans with the normal bracing for the top and the bottom, and also internal bracing, a lot of it using floorboards, which were subsequently used to build the floor. We built a road out of the yard. The truck would ease out of the yard across the railway lines, and it included a trolley about 2/3 of the way down and underneath the truss that was had about 8 or more wheels on it. It was totally hydraulic with its own compressor and a seat for the operator who sat inside the span. And as the truck moved, it was able to guide the stern end of it, which was 144 feet behind the truck, out of the yard, onto the railway line, along the right-of-way, down along the riverbank to the general store, and into the parking lot and across the road. So
Wakefield had never seen anything like it.
it was extraordinary. The police
came for miles.
Exactly.
For the whole week, yeah.
Exactly. Here, it nearly met its Waterloo. It had to get around the permanent train water tank, and as it was, as the trolley adjusted to take it as close as possible to the edge of the river, suddenly there was a crash. The whole span tipped over about 10 degrees. there was a gasp from the crowd and
Yes.
silence. The amazing thing happened. The CDS from Stittsville crew moved silently and effortlessly to locate further.
Well, it was a hidden culvert that had caused
It
that.
had
wasn't
fallen
it?
into a culvert that we
Yeah.
hadn't realized. It dropped about at least 2 feet. But the woodwork was not affected at all. It was very robust. But they hoisted it, they used rams to move it up out of the hole, filled the hole, and within 20 minutes, the truck was edging slowly forward across the parking lot, across the road, Highway 105, and subsequently, the whole span was arranged perpendicular to a riverbank, and the truck was starting to back up over the riverbank. The barge was already assembled, held against the riverbank. The water was deep there, and the tug worked hard to ram it up against the shore. The truck had to drive up a wood ramp of wood blocks as it lifted the bridge up to sufficient height to land it onto 2 huge I-beams that sat on the scaffolding, and there we are.
We couldn't believe that such a flimsy-looking vehicle could carry that.
But
It was
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Note that they had side sponson tanks on either side that gave it stability at the same time as it was able to move up the river. We had 3 days in which to move it. Police were organized, communications went out, the weather looked good, except for we had 3 warnings of 3 hurricanes out in the South Atlantic. We kept our fingers crossed and a few other things also. School was called out, and the last checks were made by the moving contractor that everything was tight and ready to go. Next day was the lift. School was out. We had one of Rob's engineering friends provide a communique and description of the work as it happened. The school kids loved it. The community was lining the route and lining the riverbank.
And they're raising their own kids now.
That's right. Here we are, moving cautiously up the river. Fortunately, we had lined up the residue of what we used to call the Gatineau Navy, which was the tugboats used to move the pulp logs across the lakes and down the river. You see the major one in front. It had a line to it, a steel hawser to it, but the locomotion was primarily by the tug at the back of it. There's just a center strip in the middle between the rapids. Where you see the water moving, there was rocks under it, and it was not deep, but the central part was really deep. The white tugboat there headed for the main abutment and linked the hawser around it with a pulley back to the barge, and the barge had air compressed driven winches who winched it slowly and cautiously in and over the central abutment. At the same time, holding its own in the current, there was a current behind the central abutment was not that strong, but when we came to turn it sideways and pull in the other end against the east bank, it was having to work against a fairly strong current. Not only that, of course, the rocks just down below were visible in the rapids. And about that time, gusts of wind started to cause the sail effect to move the barge almost out of control. But between the tug upriver and the tug below, they were able to stabilize it and move the whole span onto the central pier where it was held over the foundation in the center and up to the eastern side where we discovered that it was too low. That end of the span had to be lifted up. As most of the community were watching with some anxiety and had everybody there, an owner-operator with a backhoe parked close by the bridge. He was out on a boat watching the circus as it went by. He hopped aboard and with his backhoe handily lifted it up onto the east side abutment. A great sigh of relief. A day later, the next span was moved out. Having had the first run, things went very easily. The weather was perfect. The water level was perfect. The current was minimized. It wasn't too windy. And the only thing was, would it fit? Same process, past the rapids, one end onto the central span where it was stabilized, and then across to the west side where the father of David Laflamme, the operating company, was there, anxious to see whether there was a good fit. From the previous experience, they had a crane handy to lift it up onto the abutment. And he said, my God, will it fit? In the center, the posts of the ends in the center came together perfectly. You'll notice the V, because the top half of the arch span snugged up close together, whereas at the bottom there was about a 3 to 4 inch gap, which we anticipated, and that would slowly close and would move as the bridge was loaded up, but it was a perfect fit. The two sides were joined by one gangplank and a few bits of lumber across. On the other side, the four of the Wakefield covered bridge were happy to see that the bridge was stabilized. You see Norma next to me, Anita, who was there every day recording the events and was the secretary of the committee, and Ivan Hale, who was the chair of the committee. We were all extremely relieved. However, it was only 2 months before we were into winter. Work started immediately. First, the flooring went down onto the interior. The cross bracing was removed, or the temporary bracing was removed. The final cross bracing on the inside of the bridge was erected, as were the bridge trusses. On the outside, you can see it's a massive structure. That's only half of it. And they'd started adding the purlins across the bridge to stabilize the roof trusses as the work went on inside the bridge. There you see them completing the purlins.
I can't believe the accuracy with which you sawed all that lumber from those big logs. It's just amazing.
They did an amazing
You
job.
had to have the tension just right too to keep things square.
That's
It's
correct.
a wonderful job.
That's correct. A great view from the top. This was 40 feet up. It was a popular place because we had quite a few volunteers who, over a period of 2 weeks, put the metal roof on. That is Martin Patel, who was extremely good in construction and was there to help us all the way. The steel roof was provided by Ideal Roofing and was 8,000 square feet, I think, roughly. We erected it in a couple of weeks. There it is, completed. It was a hazardous job to do because you had to haul each long sheet up and secure it. In the middle, there had to be a provision for some flexibility because of the two spans. At that stage, that was the bridge secured for the winter and still closed off. I forgot to tell you that we had the first of the bridge jamborees after the initial spans went across, where there was a party on the road with music and dancing.
Oh, yes.
And it was full of joy. Things looked really promising at that stage. And it looked like the bridge was well secured for the winter.
There was such a spirit to the whole thing, wasn't it?
It's amazing.
It's just wonderful to think back to it, you know.
Looking up at the bridge in the fall, you could see the rapids that we had to go through and avoid. Heaven help us if anything had gone wrong. And in the distance, you can see the concrete bridge. Interestingly enough, Ideal Roofing seized the opportunity to rename their products as Wakefield Bridge, Wakefield Bridge Products. And they now have a very active business in not just steel roofing, but other forms of roofing. Spring came. You'll note that we've converted the bridge into the workshop. We added doors so that we could secure the area for our equipment, and work could proceed inside at the same time. The painting attracted all and sundry, all ages, and went on. The knots had to be primed. There's 10,000 square feet of pine siding that we acquired from a local company, Atlas, and the community helped with the painting. All ages were welcome. There's Mario Breton in charge of moving the siding and installing the siding. As it went up, a second painted coat was added.
And Mario was Mr. Covered Bridge, wasn't he? He was just an amazing worker.
Mario worked on it with Robin McLeod for 4 years, and it was the highlight of his life. Then we moved on to finding and erecting a stone for the plaque, landscaping. The inside of the bridge this winter shows you beautiful structure in beautiful shape. more
Oh,
important,
that's amazing.
Anita took the picture of the final bridge. This was now in late 1997, and it just shone with pride. And the view from the village, from the cenotaph, shows how when it burnt, the heart was torn out of the village. It was the iconic view from the village. The Governor General Romeo Leblanc kindly agreed to open the bridge and was piped in, accompanied by Norma and Ivan, the chairman. He unveiled the plaque that included the main participants, the volunteers, the donors, the contractors, the people who participated in this amazing task. Anita and Mario helped the Governor General. Those two people were emblematic of the dedication of the work that they put into it. Afterwards, the informal cake cutting with Mayor Robert Boussière on his left and Anna Tivieres, who was heading up the Chamber of Commerce at the time. Romeo Leblanc was happily autographing all and sundry.
He had a ball that day. He didn't want to go home.
He didn't want to go home, no.
No.
And what's going on these days? Well, the bridge is used for all kinds of events. Here's a granny concert celebrating African arts, African drummers. We had a drumming circle on the bridge, maybe 600 people on the bridge, used for sales, yoga, music. We've had movies on the bridge. Later on, with the creation of Fairburn Heritage Center, they managed weddings were available for rentals. Note the wonderful garden that was being made by a small group of volunteer gardeners. This was a wedding that was perhaps a little early in the spring, but it went ahead. Of course, the bridge was the perfect place for weddings. This winter, we see the bridge in its glory in the snow. And lastly, a recent picture showing it in place from an aerial view. You can see the rapids below the bridge, some wires that went across on the upper side, and the new bridge in the distance, and the glorious Laurentians snow-covered. This was courtesy of Fan Song Photo, much appreciated. So the perfect view was restored. Let me just echo for Joan and myself our thanks to all the people who participated in this. Our project actually accelerated faster and faster as we went through it. The construction took 4.5 years to complete it. We had some barn-raising parties, what we called bridge jamborees. The bridge was officially renamed Wakefield Bridge by the municipality in the year 2002. Now, if we could go to screen, Joan has some artifacts to show you.
This is the, is it showing?
You're all good, Joan. Perfect.
It's good. Okay, this is the covered bridge book which I referred to, and it really is quite exciting to read it and get that feeling again that we had of all pulling together. And this was the covered bridge license plate that we were selling. And I'm wearing the badge, one of the badges that they were wearing. If I have time, I want to tell one little story.
Go ahead, go ahead quickly.
One time in the winter, when the snow was piled up at each end of the bridge, I was driving along and I saw a woman come with 2 children and 2 tricycles in the middle of winter to go in and tricycle in the covered bridge.
Lovely.
That was nice, eh? Yeah.
So how about questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, great, Neil and Joan. I mean, talk about ingenuity and community support. What a story. And thank you
It
so
was
much. What a
riveting.
delightful experience this has been. And yes, I'm sure there may be some questions. I know there's been a lot of comments coming in about what a fabulous presentation it's been, an amazing story, fantastic, Neil and Joan. So lots of great compliments, and how proud you must be of that experience and your community. It sort of blows my mind. Can you imagine what it was like to build a bridge in the 19th century? I mean, it was epic in the 20th century, wasn't it? So
Absolutely. And it's been rewarded with the number of people who pass by every day of the week, summer or winter, it doesn't matter. There's people there, and we meet people from all over the world who share their experiences.
if you have any questions, you can either use the chat box. Some people are a little shy about that. So if you're kind of old school like me, you can wave your hand.
And I'll let people know again, just PSA here. If you're looking for the chat box in Zoom, it's on the bottom. It's about halfway along the screen. That's if you're on a computer. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you may have to tap the screen once. There might be something that says more with 3 dots. Click there, and in there you should see a label that says chat. So just let us know if you have a question. You don't have to type it out. We'll queue you up. I just want to say to Joan and Neil, thank you for sharing that story. Absolutely riveting. You're both such great storytellers. It's an emotional story too. And you really conveyed that. And I think about the symbolism of the bridges and how the community came together. It's such an incredible tale, and I want to thank you personally for sharing it with us here at Heritage Talks, because this call is being recorded. I think it's so important to have your story. So just thank you too so much.
Neil, are there any other bridges in your area? Is the Wakefield Covered Bridge the only one?
No, there's I think it's 8 remaining bridges in our immediate region in various states and conditions. One burnt down a winter ago and has been replaced. We volunteered our knowledge about covered bridges. It was a covered bridge. It burnt to the ground, and it was replaced with a wider bridge using the abutments, but it was more convenient for the local farmers for hauling their goods across rather than a narrow enclosed bridge.
We have a comment, Matthew Farfan, our executive director. Matthew, just give me a second. I'm going to find you, and I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you're good. Matthew, what did you want to say?
Well, I wanted to congratulate the speakers on a fantastic presentation, inspiring. And, Quebec has lost so many covered bridges over the last decades. New Brunswick, it's insane how many bridges have come down. But your story really is an illustration of how anything is achievable if a community comes together with the right volunteers, expertise, equipment, a little bit of fundraising, know-how, and just drive and determination to get something done. And it's just really, really an inspiring story. So thank you for sharing it.
Our pleasure. It was a wonderful experience for us to go through, something we'll never forget. It was amazing how challenging it was every step of the way, and we were constantly pinching ourselves, but everything worked out well and was timely. It was the right time. You couldn't do it another time. The logs were there. They stopped the log drive in '91. Hence, we had access to boom logs, BC fir, incredible quality wood. And we had people with know-how, people with the energy and the willingness to put it all together, take a lot of risks. And
we had this crazy village of Wakefield that could do anything.
Yeah, I mean, taking that load up a river took a very brave contractor who are used to building steel bridges, they thought we were a little crazy, but they did a wonderful job, as did everyone else that we worked with.
Amazing.
I have a question from Ruth. She wanted to know if wasn't it possible to build the bridge in situ? Why did you have to move to a different location?
Well, there was a good reason for that. It was in my notes to mention it, but there's not enough time to mention all aspects. But of course, there's a big difference from 1915, where there was no road. It was wood right down to the narrows. And so they could cut down the trees and build it right there and then on a platform without a roaring river going through. Today, there's a house, two houses on one side and a road on the other. There was no room. It was extremely difficult. What we needed, and this is where the move to the village was absolutely essential. We had to do it in full view of everybody. Everybody in the region drives past that where we had our workspace. And for a long time, they wondered, what the heck are we doing sawing all that wood? And then, bingo, we had 4 trusses, and the next day they were moving out and floating up the river. So had to be that way.
There's a question from Facebook. I'm just going to find it. I guess it's a reasonable question. Were there any accidents during the building of the bridge?
Well, we thank our lucky stars. It was essential that the municipality backed us up with their insurance policy. And that was very well received. We were extremely careful, the workers, but it was, I have to say, potentially very hazardous work. I think there were a few blue nails from hammering and different things like that. No fingers were lost that we were aware of. 2 people had to jump in the river. Otherwise, I didn't mention being able to protect the operation as we moved up the river. I lined up a volunteer who had a great big speedboat down in Farm Point and was prone to zipping up and down the river. And I said, you know, we really need your help to make sure that all boats and canoes and what have you are kept a safe distance away. So he was there with all his horsepower to help. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but he did a great job. But there were no accidents other than when it fell into the culvert hole and no one was hurt there. And the moving team seamlessly corrected it. You wouldn't know anything had happened.
I was on edge at that part of your story. I have to be honest, Neil. That was great. There's another one on Facebook. Someone was wondering if the culprit, the arsonist, was ever found.
No, not really, and I don't know how hard people look for it, really. But no, there was no. No.
All one can say is that he did one hell of a job. The car was recovered from the cinders of the floor of the bridge that floated a few miles downstream. The police, needless to say, recovered the car, and all indications of its identification had been carefully removed and filed out. So we can assume it was most likely people associated with the heavy trucking that went on in the
money exchange hands.
Yeah.
Dreadful. Yeah, because we saw your images very quickly of the burning bridge. It must have been shocking for the community to see it. So heartbreaking. So yeah.
We have a question from Vicky. Just give me a second, Vicky. I'm going to find you there and unmute you. Oh, there, I see you. All right, Vicky.
Hi, Glenn. How are you?
Good. Welcome back. Thank
you. Hello, Mr. Faulkner and Mrs. Garnett. You said that at the beginning that the reconstruction of the bridge was initiated by the citizens of Wakefield. I was wondering, what was the initial reaction of the Wakefield municipality after the citizens' decision to rebuild the bridge? Did they embrace your willingness to maintain the covered bridge as the main identity pillar of Wakefield?
Well, to be fair, the bridge burnt in '84 and people were shocked. There was a temporary bridge and a concrete bridge was immediately built upriver. Rational people thought, well, why rebuild the bridge? So it was tough to try and raise enthusiasm. People were still hurting then.
Yes, that's right.
So actually people were talking about, they were looking for a commercial partner, the possibility of stringing a 2-story bridge with shops on it and make it a tourist sort of thing. And that was of interest, but nobody was there to invest the $1 million or so that it would have taken. So slowly but surely, the organization Wakefield Covered Bridge Committee registered in Quebec. The land was transferred from Transport Quebec over to the municipality. The municipality were prepared to transfer it over to Wakefield Covered Bridge if they really thought they could build it. We're now up to about 1990 now. Enthusiasm was building as people recovered and said, yeah, you know, and then we got the gift of all the logs. And so there was the wood. We needed a few other things.
I don't think we've mentioned that the municipality took the bridge over after
right.
we had built it. Yes, and that was really important because you can build anything, but to be able to assure its continuation and continued looking
maintenance
after
and stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I should add though was that right up to the final opening of the bridge, there was still a debt that we had to pay of outstanding bills in the order of about 50,000. And the Governor General came bearing a couple of checks from the National Capital Commission, Heritage Canada, that finalized that. So we were very worried as a committee that if we ended up with a mortgage on the bridge and it had already been completed. So
Norma would have sold her house, so don't worry about that.
Exactly. So that was a very happy conclusion. And at the time, of course, it along with the steam train, which was another icon of the village with regards to tourism, everything seemed back in place and was very positive.
I have a question still from Stan. He's been waiting for a while. He says, wonderful presentation. Did you use plans from the original bridge? And if so, where did you find them?
Well, there's a long answer to that. We did find original plans from the old Department of Colonization, which morphed into Transport Quebec. We had them redone as per the advice we had from Jan Lewandowski, the US expert rebuilder and repairer of covered bridges. And we added his proposals, we doubled up on the cord, and then even to the last minute with the attachments for the roof to the main structure, we had our student engineers, because we had a small group of, I think about 5, they designed steel flanges to go on the roof supports that really tied the roof to the bridge, because there was still the fear of the wind, which can easily torque a structure that's as high as it is, which was 30 feet high and 288 feet long. So we managed to get all those, and we had a consulting engineer permanently who signed his life away by saying, "Oh yes, it's all going to work."
We have a Facebook
And
question.
Wakefield should become necessary, which I suppose it will. It could still be used for traffic.
There's a question on Facebook, and Neil, I think you covered this a little bit, but Sherry on Facebook was wondering some of the key people involved with the design and engineering knowledge who knew how to design and build the bridge.
Well, I didn't mention Laurent Derry, who was a retired engineer who was part of the Brains Trust that I had. He supplied the quarry, he supplied his engineering experience, he supplied his contacts with Quebec City when it was required. He was always available on site, advising Robin, helping Robin, and helping me with the key stuff. And he brought credibility to our organization, I think, which was really important. So we have all the plans. They're now with the Gatineau Valley Historical Society and with Fairburn. So all our records and notes from this will be preserved. I'd like to mention on the Fairburn site, there's a record of a movie that was made, and it's got some of the same photography, but they've animated in an excellent way. And if people want to see more of the action that happened and some of the stories that happened that we didn't have time to tell, I mean, I think we were allowed 50 minutes or something.
Oh, don't worry about that, you two.
It was really hard we cut to the quick.
When you have a good story, you just got to tell it. And actually, we have that video to play afterwards. I just want to say, I know not everyone is super comfortable with Zoom. If you had a question and your camera is on and you didn't find the chat box, just wave. We will be wrapping up shortly. All that to say. Okay, I see Melanie Hopkins. So Melanie, I'm going to unmute you. You're on. What did you want to ask?
Well, Norma and Norma, oh my God, Joan and Neil, you did an amazing presentation. And you know, from my memories of the whole thing, it was the Neil and Norma show from the beginning, and it would not have happened without you guys. And I still have my duplicate check here that I wrote through the Historical Society, and I was so proud to be able to at least buy one roof brace. And what was the other thing? We're so lucky.
It was important.
Oh yeah, and we're so lucky we had the railway there, you know, and it hadn't been taken away, which I still friggin' miss. Then the other thing was, when you mentioned that someone wanted to have they were proposing to have boutiques and everything. Well, that was actually my dreamer architect husband, Alan Hopkins, along with Wayne Rostad, who was a local entertainer, and Dave Smith from the place next door. He had a restaurant on Rideau Street, and they all got together and thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have a restaurant across the top of the bridge, and you know, and then have all the boutiques underneath. And Alan actually wanted to, well, he was talking to the natives in Maniwaki to have a little Indian village over where I think it's Hendrick Park now on the other side. So you guys just did a great job, and I was so happy to see it 30 years ago. Yay for you.
Thank you very much for that. But you know, you raised an interesting point. At the time, there was a small piece of land that was donated by Vince Hendricks on the other side. We were at that time thinking about building it there, perhaps. But after the bridge was built, there was a development in Wakefield that required the removal of the old Fairburn farmhouse. Fairburn was the Scot who built the first mill in 1838, I think it was. Anyway, so we put two and two together, and moved the Fairburn house over to the land we had on the other side by the bridge. And the only reason it worked is because somehow council had some renewed confidence that we were able to move things. And so that's when Michael Cooper joined the group, and he and I involved the moving of the old building over the new bridge and across the fields and into an expanded Briggs Park.
And that's been a wonderful marriage between the Fairburn House and the bridge. It continues
Exactly.
to be a very good arrangement. Yeah.
And it's all about heritage, and that became a regional museum and a heritage center, which, as you will see from the movies and other resources that are available. So it's all come together rather neatly.
Do we have anybody else with a question? Anybody waving their hand? I'm sorry, Glenn, I only have a small view of everyone. So.
I got them all. Anyone there, even if you just have a comment, just wave your hand and you can come on, Mike. I think maybe, I don't know if AC and Mark Dolgan, that was a thumb, I think, but I don't think it was a hand.
Well, you're
anyhow,
getting wonderful, wonderful comments, Neil and Joan. And so I guess if there's nobody else at the moment, I'll start the wrap up then.
we do have a video to share, just to
Yes,
remember.
we do. Yeah, don't forget. I won't. We'll do something a little different as we close today. Fairbairn House has given us a film to share with you. It's called The Wakefield Covered Bridge. It's a 4-minute clip. So after I say goodbye, the film will come on. And so you can take 4 minutes extra to watch their film. And also there's an extended one, another one called The Woman Who Lost Her View. It's about a 20-minute film. And we'll put the link up to that on our Facebook page. So you can watch that at your leisure.
That film is on the internet too.
Oh, okay, great.
Can be accessed on the internet.
So there's lots of ways to find that one. But just as we finish this one, finish our day with you, we'll put the shorter version up of the Wakefield Covered Bridge for people to see. So don't leave after I say goodbye. You can keep on watching. But I just wanted to say thank you to you both, Neil and Joan. What a fabulous story you've told us, from everything so creative, from the selling of bolts, nuts and bolts. I mean, that's wonderful. And that maybe gives some other organizations some ideas for fundraising, to the actual moving of the span, the trusses, and it's just fantastic. And somebody in one of the comments said the culprit did the village a favor, perhaps. I don't know if you think that yourself, but after all of that work, but it showed what community can do when they pull together, and what spirit there is, and how proud you must be of that beautiful bridge. So thank you very much for telling the story today. It was really lovely and emotional, and you can still feel the pride and the love that you have for that bridge from the both of you. So thank you very much. Just a note for everybody, we do have another Heritage Talks coming up on Thursday, May 6th at 7 o'clock in the evening. We're going to be listening to Nancy Morelli. She's the archivist for Casa d'Italia, and she's going to tell us her project and what she's doing to preserve the history and heritage of the Italian community across Quebec. So that sounds really fascinating. It's something I don't know anything about, so I'm really looking forward to that. So that's Thursday, May 6th, right here on Heritage Talks live at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you're all welcome to join. Thanks, Glenn, for managing all the tech stuff today. Thank you to our members and to all our supporters for joining us as well. It's been fabulous. So I'll take it over to Glenn, and he can start posting the film. And have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Before 1915, settlers on the Gatineau River used scows. Scows were simple plank boats rowed by farmers and their sons, which carried animals, farm produce, and people.
to build a bridge over that river. I'm so tired of rowing the scow.
Once built, the Jean Dron covered bridge made crossing the river easier for residents of the lower Gatineau Valley. It became one of the over 1,000 covered bridges across the province of Quebec in the early 1900s.
It's so wonderful. Now I get to go visit my friends and go to the general store. Giddy up!
In the summer of 1984, an arsonist set fire to the bridge. Within minutes, the entire oil-soaked structure was ablaze.
Excuse me,
Yes?
what caused the fire?
An arsonist set fire to a car.
And what remains of the bridge?
Nothing.
If the government won't rebuild us a bridge, then we'll do it ourselves.
Here, Norma.
Led by Norma Walmsley, the community rallied to rebuild their beloved bridge. It took over 10 years to raise the $600,000 needed. Through the hard work of many volunteers, the construction of the new bridge was completed. On October 5th, 1998, Governor General Romeo Leblanc opened the new Wakefield covered bridge. Today, our pedestrian bridge is well used by tourists and residents for dog walking, cycling, and even concerts and weddings.